gathering here this afternoon. And as Neil said, I am going to provide an update about AMPD, where we are now, and a little bit about where we want to go. Obviously, we need the disclaimer, so I'll skip over that. That's the eye test for everybody. And before I get into the rest of the agenda, I would like to just introduce myself or reintroduce myself to folks who don't know me. I have met many people over the last couple of years, and so it's great to see you again. But for those who don't know me, my name is James Hursthouse. I have been a creative technology and digital media entrepreneur for about 22, 23 years now. I got my start in the industry around 2000. I was actually living in Japan, and I was very fortunate to have a front row seat for the very early days of massively multiplayer online gaming. So obviously that is a huge number of people sharing experiences in digital spaces. So in some ways, the pioneer to the current metaverse boom that we're seeing now. As far back as 2007, I was a contributing author to a white paper that you can see here called the Metaverse Roadmap. So you can call it the metaverse, or you can call it the next generation of digital content, whatever you like to call it. This has been part of my reality for many years now. I have been a co-founder of a number of different game studios, notably Roadhouse Interactive, which was what brought me to Vancouver back in 2010. And we grew Roadhouse to about 180 people at its peak. Joined AMPD in around 2016, I think, initially as a consultant, but then full-time from 2019. Also founded the Departure Lounge. And until very recently, I was a board member of Canada's Digital Technology Supercluster. And also I am on the board of DigiBC, which is the Creative Technology Industry Association of British Columbia. So for me, my career has always really been about this blend of creativity and technology. A couple of career highlights, and I like to say career highlights to date, because obviously there are many more ahead. But I don't know if it's the same for you, but I remember my mom telling me, you know, nothing will ever come from playing video games. And I did enjoy phoning her from Haneda Airport in Tokyo after I got off Iron Maiden's jet, having been the originator of the Iron Maiden Legacy of the Beast mobile game when I was back at Roadhouse. And that was actually a pretty innovative project. It was the first time that a major music artist toured a video game rather than toured an album. And being an absolute massive fan of the band, that was clearly a career highlight for me. Here you can see the logo of the game on the side of the aeroplane there, which again was a personal triumph. And very much more recently, actually last week, one thing I do want to apologize is that I do have still got a bit of a cold here, a little bit of a cough. And I picked that up in the desert over in Saudi Arabia. I was very fortunate to be invited along with 150 of the world's leading TV, movie, and game producers to an industry showcase at NEOM, which many of you may be aware is the new $700 billion city in the desert development that's currently taking place in Saudi Arabia. And so again, it was very gratifying to be invited to that industry showcase, which I think indicates to a certain degree, you know, the recognition of the progress that we've been making at AMPD and Departure Lounge. Okay, so that's me. So moving on, what I want to cover today, what I'd actually like to do is just take a little bit of a step back. And for those of you who are newer or those who may need a refresher, just take a look at what AMP Ventures actually is. And once again, quickly reiterate why it is that we're doing what we're doing. Obviously, we need to address the current situation, which I will do. And then, as Neil said, give you a little bit of background and updates on Departure Lounge, because maybe you're not as familiar with the Departure Lounge subsidiary as maybe the other parts of the AMP business. Then we'll look at next steps, and then we'll move over to the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. All right. So why are we doing what we're doing? Now, a lot of people, I guess, look at metaverse, and obviously it's been a term that's been, you know, at certain points very attractive and at certain points not so attractive. And it doesn't really matter in a sense. You can call metaverse, or you can call it whatever you like. The fact that metaverse is still a term that's good enough for Jensen Huang and NVIDIA with its $650 billion market cap. So right now, NVIDIA is holding its annual conference in San Jose, Silicon Valley, NVIDIA GTC, 20th to the 23rd. So NVIDIA's focus is right around the era of AI and the metaverse. Time described the metaverse as the next digital era that will change everything. And that's why, whether you like to call it the metaverse or not, we believe that this is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. So again, whether you call it the metaverse or not, what we are talking about is a new era of digital content that is here and happening now. So this is very important. I think a lot of people hear metaverse and they think about something that's maybe, 5 to 10 years away, but it's not. Our experience is that this is a new era, a new generation of digital content, both content creation, content distribution, and everything that's associated with it. So whatever we decide to call it, the next generation of the internet is going to be in 3D. Okay, users are going to be immersed in digital content experiences rather than viewing digital content experiences through screens, right? So we call this the new era of digital content creation and distribution, and we call it a massive amount of opportunity. So interestingly, the same technologies that are driving this revolution, most of which actually came from the games industry in the first place, are also powering the next generation of digital content creation and distribution itself. And that's across multiple sectors, not only in entertainment, but also in enterprise and architectural visualization, medical training, VR immersive experiences, and all of these kinds of things, right? And so it's been really clear to us, actually, since 2007, when I contributed to the Metaverse Roadmap, that this new era would demand a new type of compute infrastructure on the one hand, and it would also demand new approaches to content creation, particularly 3D content creation. So when you look at the sort of addressable universe that AMP wants to be at the center of, it's right here. And you could say that to date, Departure Lounge has addressed real-time and virtual production, augmented reality and VR, digital twins and simulation, and digital content and gaming. And then on the other side, AMP has been focused, or AMP Technologies has been focused on providing the cloud services, the machine learning, artificial intelligence, and not so much yet blockchain and Web3, I will admit, and DeFi and DAO. But if you look at the addressable opportunity, this really helps define that universe. So what did we do about it? We've created this structure. And again, for the sake of just re-emphasizing the clarity around the different organizations within the group, AMP Ventures is the organization which is the public topco. This is the entity in which you are shareholders, and thank you very much for being shareholders in this entity, right? To restate this, AMP Ventures, as a public top company, is assembling a portfolio of synergistic subsidiary companies across the key value creation points of the metaverse ecosystem. Again, you can choose to replace metaverse ecosystem with new generation of digital content ecosystem, right? We don't have to use the word metaverse if we don't want to. Right, AMP Technologies is a subsidiary that is owned 100% by AMP Ventures. It is addressing the requirement for next generation cloud and compute infrastructure, which will be required in this new era of digital content creation and distribution. We have invested in a studio suite called AMP Virtual Studio Suite. This is a new way of building content hosted in data centers, right? And I'll come on to that in a second. Secondly, Departure Lounge Inc., which we funded in December 2021, addresses the requirements in the new era of digital content creation, distribution. So that's primarily real-time and virtual production technologies, including, importantly, metastage volumetric capture. And we aim to be a next-generation media production and creative services company with Metastage as a strategic partner and investor. Now, of course, Departure Lounge requires the type of compute that AMP Technologies has developed. And in the future, as we move forward, we want to create additional value by adding these additional key components of the metaverse ecosystem into this mix. But each subsidiary has its own management, it has its own mission and mandate, but all of the value that can be created through this series of subsidiaries is obviously very compatible, and that value then flows up to AMP Ventures, which is where you guys are thankfully shareholders. Okay, obviously this wouldn't be an investor presentation if we didn't have a slide with a lot of up and to the right graphs, but I think these are important because it really helps encapsulate what I'm talking about. Okay, so Down as far as the volumetric video capture piece that Departure Lounge has, there's a 26% CAGR up towards 2030. So even this very small piece of the business, I guess the linchpin of the business in many ways, sees significant growth over the next few years. But importantly, we can see here that demand for digital content, for example, with video streaming, Netflix and TikTok television, all these kinds of things, set to grow to 1.7 trillion by 2030. Digital transformation to 1.6 trillion by 2030. And this may surprise some of you, virtual reality itself, a massive 55% CAGR to 2030, where it in and of itself will be worth $1 trillion. Okay, now Andreessen Horowitz recently put out a report that said by the end of 2026, there will be more VR headsets than Xboxes in the world. And I'll come on to explain a little bit about why we think that is the case. The metaverse market itself, and this isn't the 13 trillion, 18 trillion valuation that certain companies are putting on the metaverse economy. When you look at that 1.3 trillion market size by 2030, this is the size of the market for the development of metaverse experiences, rather than thinking about e-commerce and all of the other things that are going to transfer over from the 2D internet. And then finally, just to emphasize the point that this is not just an entertainment play, it's an architectural play, it's a training play, it's a medical visualization play. Digital twinning alone is also set to grow very rapidly to be worth about $160 billion by 2030. So I think we have the tailwind of the market with us as well. Okay, but obviously, we're here today to address a couple of issues around the current state of the business. So it's never actually been truer or more true that this new era of digital content requires a new type of compute infrastructure. This is the original vision of AMPD, right? We know that traditional cloud wasn't built for the demands of this new generation of digital content. Okay, it was built originally for e-commerce and other purposes. But as we move to a 3D internet, we do need a new type of high-performance cloud and computing, okay? So AMP Virtual Studio, for example, is a suite of hosted tools for this new generation of digital content creation, hosted in enterprise-grade data centers. It's more powerful, more flexible than a workstation under your desk. It's more secure than a workstation under your desk. It's way more sustainable than a workstation under your desk. So with the money that's been invested in the company so far, we have established a stellar network of partners, including NVIDIA. We've proven that AMP Virtual Studio, that the offering itself resonates with customers, including with some major players. And we have proven that AMP Virtual Studio is up to 66% greener than under the desk workstations. But, and here's the but, it is a capital intensive play. And we are in a challenging market environment, and we've realized that, right? So I'm here today partly to say that we fully acknowledge that we have to face the facts that we need to reset the strategy around AMP technologies, not the vision, not the purpose, and not the North Star. The North Star for me is shining as brightly as it ever has, but we have to acknowledge that we are in difficult, challenging market environments right now. A number of the major deals that we were counting on have not come to fruition in the time frame that we needed them to, right? And obviously we know about market conditions in general. But I do want to stress that investment in the product to date is not going to go to waste, at least not because the Departure Lounge needs this kind of technology that we've developed, but that's really, in some ways an ancillary benefit, right? What we are going to do is make the necessary adjustments to enable the AMP Virtual Studio offering in particular to grow more organically in a less capital intensive way. And when I say Virtual Studio Suite, I mean virtual workstations, I mean render, and render is required across the board in this new era of digital content, and also storage, right? So it's a new kind of compute platform, right? What we're doing right now is we're conducting rapid, rigorous analysis to understand exactly what this means. But we do know that we need to shift to a less capital intensive model. We are still in advanced stages of negotiations on various opportunities. But again, the important thing to do is to make sure that we can close those opportunities without continuing to burn the cash that we have. And we fully acknowledge that. Now, fortunately, in some ways, there is the other side to the business, which I think speaks to the strength of the idea of a company that owns a portfolio of valuable subsidiaries. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now talking about the Departure Lounge, where we have been seeing growth it's less capital intensive. And actually, in some ways, what we're doing at Departure Lounge actually in some ways is compatible with more of a recession, as people still need to create digital content, still need to create movies, still need to create TV shows, but they need to do it in a more cost-conscious way. And so I think this is what we have established at Departure Lounge. Now, some of this you've heard before, so at the risk of repetition, I will just say it again from the lens of Departure Lounge, okay? So, new era of digital content needs AMP technologies from the perspective of the cloud and compute side of things. The new era of digital content needs Departure Lounge when it comes to making that content, okay? So, 3 points, some of which overlap with what I've said, but nonetheless. So John Riccatello at Unity says, we're transitioning from flat screen media that is viewed to immersive media that is experienced, okay? He says, every single company with a 2D internet homepage will have a 3D spatial metaverse hub by 2030. Now, I don't actually think he's right, because there are 2 billion 2D internet homepages, but he doesn't have to be very right in order for this to represent a huge amount of opportunity and a huge amount of work. And some of the work that we've already been doing at Departure Lounge speaks very directly to this theory that we're transitioning to the 3D web. Second, real-time and virtual production is disrupting every sector from entertainment through to enterprise. Okay, so digital twinning for architecture, medical simulation, all of these things are being disrupted by real-time and virtual production. So Sir Roger Deakins, who's a very well-known cinematographer, most recently worked on Blade Runner 2049. He says that in 10 to 20 years, movie making will mostly be made up of CGI-based digital humans acting within virtual worlds, and you won't be able to tell the difference. And I say, wrong again, right? Not from the perspective that he's incorrect in that CGI-based humans won't be acting within virtual worlds, but we're doing it now. And in fact, at the recent South by Southwest, this was a product that we showed. So not 10 to 20 years, this is happening right now, and we're making revenue from it right now, okay? And then lastly, demand for content has never been higher. You saw that graph of the video streaming demand for $1.7 trillion by 2030. But the way that we've been making movies and television to date is damaging the environment, right? So here you can see a stat that the US and film, that just the US film and television industry alone uses as much energy and results in as much carbon emission as 15 million tons per year, which is the equivalent to 3 million US homes, or the same as 35 million barrels of oil. So we need a new way to develop digital content. So that's why we put the Departure Lounge together, okay? What we do is we create 3D immersive worlds for every screen. So that's mobile phones. Soon it's going to be Apple's augmented reality glasses. It's your car windshield. It's going to be your computer. It's going to be your console. It's going to be VR headsets. And it's also the giant LED walls that you might have seen used to create TV shows like The Mandalorian, okay? Importantly, and the differentiator is that we offer volumetric capture with the world's pioneer in volumetric capture in Metastage. So volumetric capture, and I'll come on unpack this in a minute. So other synergistic technologies to quickly and easily bring natural, authentic human performances into these immersive worlds, okay? So what are these immersive worlds going to be? What is this new generation of digital content going to be if people aren't in it, okay? That's why it's actually called the Departure Lounge, because it's your gateway to the metaverse, okay? We have a team of 20 people made up of experts across digital media content, video gaming, infrastructure, corporate and business development. And in the first 2 quarters of operations since we opened in September of 2022, we generated around $475,000 in studio and creative fees. And that is for Fortune 500 companies, leading Web3 companies, music artists, academic institutions. Again, sort of proving the point that this is an application which is relevant across all sectors of society, not just entertainment. Our approach is suggested to result in as much as a 90% reduction in CO2 emissions, because we don't need crew, we don't need caravan, we don't need cranes, we don't need generators, we don't need tons of people going off to movie sets and burning a ton of energy. It can all happen within the 4 walls of the studio in Vancouver, right? And obviously it's worth saying again that all of this stuff needs the type of high performance computing solutions that we've been developing at AMP Technologies, which is where the synergies between the 2 companies lie. Okay, so again, we know we need to take a step back. We know we need to be more cautious with AMP Technologies, but fortunately, Departure Lounge is here, and AMP Technologies will once again reassert its importance as we move forward. Okay, so lots of jargon. I'm going to unpack it. Supercharged by volumetric capture and other compatible technologies, Departure Lounge aims to become the global leader in next generation media production and creative services. Okay, so volumetric capture, what is it? I'm going to show you in a minute, but I'm going to explain what it is first. Okay, so what we do is we use 106 high resolution cameras around a 40-foot green screen environment. And what they do is they shoot natural human performances from every angle. So no special suit, no little ping pong balls over a skin tight suit, right? And what that does is it quickly and easily turns any performance into a digital model for use in any digital application. Okay, so if you need a 3D human, this is the most effective, highest quality way to get there. And the use cases that we've seen already include virtual TV and movie production, video games, interactive training and educational applications, 3D websites, architectural digital twins, augmented reality experiences, enhanced museums, and all these kinds of things, okay? So really a massive number of use cases across the board. So what do I mean by next generation media? What I mean by that is it's media that is immersive and experienced and not only viewed, okay? We've already said that the world's transitioning to this new generation of media that we will experience, not view, okay? It's going to be experienced through pretty much every device. Like I said, you know, we all think that Apple's right around the corner with its augmented reality headset. We've seen augmented reality coming into car windshields and all these kinds of things, right? So not just your typical console, not just your PC, not necessarily just your VR headset, but really pretty much any screen that exists. It's going to be real time and it's going to be ubiquitous. That needs a lot of compute, okay? But also, and this is why it's not just technology for technology's sake, it really does unlock new levels of creativity and storytelling, okay? Because if I can capture humans and I can put them in a fully digital environment and I can go into that environment and do my shoot, right? I don't need a crane anymore. You know, I don't need drones anymore. I don't need permits anymore. I don't need the practicalities of real world filmmaking any longer. Okay, so that very exciting for creators. And when you get creators excited, then you know you're onto something special because it's not just technology for technology's sake, okay? Finally, even though I'm not going to dwell on this, it is built around the key pillars of Web3. Okay, so without the blockchain and smart contracts and decentralization, we don't really have this next generation of digital content. What these things allow us to do is disenfranchise the key stakeholders, the middlemen in the movie industry, for example. So entertainment that goes directly from the creator to the audience with smart contracts that distribute rights here and there. All of these things are going to be very important in this next generation. So that is in the future of the organization, particularly generative AI, but I'm not going to touch on that too much because that's a next year problem. Well, probably a next month problem rather than a next year problem anyway. Okay, so importantly, before I get onto a little bit more explanation, how do we make money? Okay, so on the studio side, it's primarily studio rental fees and fees per processed minute. Okay, very boring, very mundane, but good. Okay, since we opened in September, we've done about $155,000 in studio rental fees. It's roughly 20,000 Canadian dollars a day, roughly $8,000 Canadian per minute of processing. Okay, and we're looking at about $2.4 million in forecast, conservative forecast for the rest of this year. That is the equivalent of 160 minutes of processing. Okay, and roughly between 55 and 60 days of studio rental. And we're already seeing the traction there, okay? Now, it's not in this deck, but I want to point out that there was a production that came out in December, Whitney Houston's new biopic, right? So I think it's called I Want to Dance with Somebody. That movie alone did 1,000 minutes of volumetric capture. So when I say that we're aiming to do roughly 160 during the rest of this year, you can see that, you know, the forecasts are relatively achievable. On the next generation media production side, we charge fees per development resource per month. And we've done $320,000 of that since we opened in September, right? Forecast for 2023, 3.1 million. And that is the equivalent of growing to around 48 developers by the end of this year. Now, to give you some context, Roadhouse was at 180 people when we were at our peak. So we do know how to build large scale development teams. And with the amount of work that's in the pipeline, again, I think it's very achievable, okay? All right, so here's the sexy bit of movie for you, volumetric capture. As I said, 106 cameras, It's around a 40-foot green screen environment. And as I said, without any special suit, any special markers, any human performance, immediately turned into a model. Obviously, that's great for things like fashion shows, because again, with no special suit, we capture the elegance and the splendor of the fabric. This is an example that Unity itself did, where their vision of the future of sports broadcast, again, being immersive and not on the other side of a screen, was really come to fruition. So you imagine being able to watch a UFC fight from within the octagon, or from even within the eyes of one of the fighters. That future is right with us now. So for things like sports training, education, there's an augmented reality tour of a Royal Caribbean boat. This is Blade Runner 2049 with a much better level of non-player character, thanks to the fact that they're genuine human performances. Next, we come on to live music shows in the metaverse, augmented reality presentations, augmented museum installations, music videos, and then the preservation of story in very, very meaningful and tangible ways. And finally, an example here, Charlie XCX in a Samsung television commercial. Again, the benefit here being that with only 5, 6, 7 hours of talent, we were able to then shoot for 4 or 5 days on digital location, saving a lot of time, saving a lot of energy, a lot of logistics. Okay. So now I'd just like to come on to a few examples of the work that we've been doing at Departure Lounge since we opened. So this is an example of a pretty revolutionary thing. And not only was it recognized at the recent South by Southwest Film and Television Festival, but you can see here that Will Selvis, the director of The Dark, said that volumetric technologies will revolutionize the future of audiovisual content. So we believe that what we've produced here is Canada's first volumetrically produced music video. So let me explain what was going on here, okay? So here you can see in a second, this young lady here is Caroline, otherwise known as DJ Whipped Cream. And she is an artist on the Monster Cat label, globally renowned Vancouver-based EDM label called Monster Cat. And, you know, I think the story went something like, you know, Caroline goes to Monster Cat and she says, for my new video called The Dark, what I really want to do is I want to sort of take us off to a remote hillside. I don't know, it could be Iceland, it could be New Zealand, but I want to go to this remote hillside and I want to have all of these petals flying around, and I'd like to build this remote cabin, and I would like to be able to have, you know, all of us there and film this thing on this remote hillside. Then what I'd like to do is I'd like to have some lightning and I'd like to set it all on fire. And this is what I would really like to do to be able to put forward the artistic expression for this new song. And so you can imagine that Monster Cat's initial reaction might have been, well, you know, in your dreams, but actually our reaction was actually in the Departure Lounge. You can do that, right? So what you're looking at here on the screen was produced entirely start to finish within the 4 walls of our studio in Vancouver. Down at the bottom here, you can see some of the shoot day. Okay, so again, relatively limited amount of time, a few hours. We had talent come into the studio. That means for a music artist that's busy on the road or they're on tour or whatever that is, we don't need them for days of shooting any longer. So once Josiah and Caroline and the other performers have been turned into digital models, we put them into entirely synthetic environments. So what you're looking at here, again, built entirely by the crew at Departure Lounge, are the Unreal game engine worlds into which we were able to put those digital models. Okay, and once they're digital models inside the Unreal game engine, we send in the camera crew who shoot the video using what we call virtucams. So again, you'll see some amazing shots here where the camera goes up 3,000 feet, it spins around, but we don't need cranes, we don't need drones, we don't need permits, we don't need any of that stuff, right? So pretty revolutionary. So to go back to what Roger Deakins was saying about the future of movie making being CGI humans in synthetic environments in 10 to 20 years, again, he's wrong. We're doing it now. And this was widely recognized by our peers at South by Southwest. So not only did we produce the 2D video in this revolutionary way, we also then went on to genuinely innovate with what we think is one of the world's first VR immersive music video experiences, right? And so DJ Whipped Cream did get that vision of the remote hillside in Iceland. We were able to set it on fire, but that was all thanks to the magic of virtual and real-time production. Okay, so this is a great example of what we're doing. Anybody has a VR headset, please contact me after the webinar, and we'll be happy to send you the build, because when you actually put the headset on and you walk through this experience, you really get to understand what we're doing. And again, a massive amount of compute. But do we have a massive amount of compute? Yes, we do. Okay. Now, in terms of budget, I'm not going to tell you exactly what we spent here, but I can say that it is a fraction of the money required to simply build a digital human. Okay, so scanning, digital environment creation, way more cost effective than the other techniques that we use for other similar products. Okay. Second example, we are helping Shiba Inu, the cryptocurrency, build their metaverse. Okay, less reliance here on volumetric capture, although there are some volumetrically captured dogs, and who knows how it's going to evolve over time. But we are developing the Shiba Inu metaverse. Very successful project to date. There's been about $20 million worth of virtual land sales here. And again, we're very pleased to be helping a globally recognized cryptocurrency brand build out into this new era of digital content. Finally, sorry, this one's fuzzy intentionally because we are under NDA on this one. But to go back to what John Riccatello from Unity said about every company with a 2D internet homepage having a 3D metaverse spatial hub by 2030, here's an example for you. So this is a Fortune 500 company planning to build a 3D website already. Okay, so this was through an LA digital agency called Laundromat, who brought us this work. And as you can see here, that PJ Richardson, who's the executive creative director there, says he can't say, and I can't say who it is for just yet, but what we can say is that an array of cameras volumetrically capturing video and turning it into high-res moving 3D models is one piece of a really inspiring creative future ahead. And the team at Departure Lounge in Vancouver are amazing technical wizards to collaborate with. I'm very pleased that he said that, not me personally, but the folks that we have assembled are indeed amazing technical wizards. Okay, a couple of selected partners, just want to point these ones out. So Magnopus, very, very well-renowned company down in Los Angeles. They were actually the company behind the Dubai World Expo 2020 Metaverse experience, very, very successful project. What they're doing is using the platform that they utilized in the development of that experience in Dubai and commercializing that as what we call middleware. So the platform's called Oko. What it lets you do is it helps you build metaverse experiences built on all of that work that went into that platform. And so we very gratifyingly have been selected as one of a very small number of beta participants to assist Magnopus in the commercialization of Oko. And what this does is it accelerates us by about 18 to 24 months at the very least when it comes to being able to build our own metaverse experiences. So things like character creator, things like persistence, things like multiplayer friends matching, and all these kinds of things are going to be built into this platform. About 15 years ago, I was heavily involved in the commercialization of a product called Big World, which was eventually acquired by Wargaming as the basis on which World of Tanks was built. So we understand how to, and the value of the commercialization of these kind of software layers. And it's pretty amazing technology. But what's very exciting about it, again, is that it needs a new generation of high performance cloud and compute in order to operate these kinds of platforms. Now, again, very early stages, but that, again, I think outlines the vision for the group. Finally, HTC. Some of you may be familiar with HTC as one of the world's leading semiconductor companies, but also very well known for the HTC Vive headsets. They have a market cap of about, I think, 55 billion today, Taiwanese company. And so, again, very gratifying that HTC reached out to Departure Lounge, and we were able to use the very, very innovative Flow headset for our installation of the Dark VR down at South by Southwest. And you can see here, it's interesting because I think it's about 35% of people said they didn't want to use VR because it was going to mess up their hair or their makeup or whatever. The Flow is a really amazing device in that it really is now starting to just look like a pair of goggles that you put on. So that's another reason why I think, this time around, when you see the quality of this device and you experience what you can do with it, that's why I think Andreessen Horowitz is now finally saying that, within a couple of years, we're going to see more headsets than we are consoles, which is great. Okay, so I know I can go on all day about, how bright the North Star is, but let's talk about the choppy waters that we're in at the moment. Okay, immediate future, AMP Technologies. So what we're doing right now is conducting immediate and deep analysis as to how to most effectively reset AMP technologies. Okay, we know that we're in a difficult market time. And as we said, a couple of the opportunities that we thought were going to close didn't. So what we have to do is reduce the monthly burn as quickly as possible and move to a cash flow neutral state. And we think we can do that. We're going to move from a capital intensive to a far less capital intensive strategy. As I think I've articulated, or I hope I've articulated, there is a huge amount of value in what we've built to date, what we've invested to date, okay? And I think other companies, other partners can recognize that. And we will reset the mechanism through which we engage with those companies so that they will pay us to engage, okay? Obviously, we need to ensure that the investment made to date can continue to be realized to the degree possible, and we'll do everything in our power to make sure that that's the case. Clearly, the demand for AMP Virtual Studio has been established, but the current market environment for potential customers, you know, they're facing challenges. And as a result of that, we see absolutely the demand to be more conservative as we move forward with the technology side of the business. Now, in some ways, fortunately, Departure Lounge was set up in a relatively conservative fashion. So with Departure Lounge, what we need to do is more of what we've been doing, right? Which is promoting the stage, securing more minutes of processing, securing more stage days of rental, securing more work for hire gigs that we can do, you know, on a fee-based basis. So with Departure Lounge, relatively conservatively, we expect to be cash flow positive by summer 2023. You know, no guarantees, but the signs are that the momentum is now picking up. We're starting to see a lot of inward inquiries from work that we did back in the summer when we launched the studio at SIGGRAPH to about 1,000 people. You know, obviously people don't need volumetric capture by Friday, you know, but we are starting to see a drastic increase in the number of inward inquiries. And also we're going out and evangelizing as well. So we need to increase the number of minutes processed per month and the number of developers assigned to profitable projects, as I said. We are also looking for other sources of non-dilutive funding, such as project financing for some of the projects that are in the mix, but still, we're going to continue to adopt this cautious, disciplined approach as we are across the entire group, okay? So, summary, and I'm coming to an end here. Our original premise remains intact, okay? There is a North Star. I think the North Star is shining as brightly as ever, right? But in closing, what I really want to say is thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody here. And I want to thank the team. I want to thank the partners. And I want to thank vendors and other stakeholders who have supported us so far, but also thank you in advance for the patience that you can demonstrate with us now. Okay, now it's undeniable that we are in pretty rough waters at the moment. We're navigating through some pretty choppy seas. Like I said, I really do think the North Star's there. I think it's shining brightly. And I know if we can count on people's support, that we will make it through to clearer waters relatively soon. We do know where we're going. We know we could get there. And we really very much hope that you will all be along for the ride. We will make it back to clear open waters. And I think the journey and the destination will prove to be worth it. So there is massive value to be unlocked in this new era of digital content creation and distribution. And I genuinely do appreciate any support that you can continue to offer. And personally, I just will say, I'm going to do everything in my power to reward your support and patience. And I just want to finish by saying thank you.